Hello, so much Universal Music. Here I am with my very, very good friend, Jeff Slate. We're going to talk about Bob Dylan and we're going to talk about everything in music. So, Jeff, thank you yet again for your time. We're talking about Bob Dylan today. Can you remember your first thing that got you into Dylan? Because I can remember mine.
Yeah, sure. I discovered the Byrds' Mr. Tambourine Man album in I think it was my sister's record collection, and I liked that. And then I noticed that, he because we used to read the liner notes on things like that, and there was a picture of him with the Byrds on the back cover of the album. And I noticed, this guy Bob Dylan had written the songs, and there was a picture of him there. He was apparently a big deal. So I noticed that in I believe her record collection that she'd left behind when she went to college, there were some Dylan records, and mainly that I remember his greatest hits, and listen to that. And that was, as a young kid, there were certainly things I liked, but it was a little hard going. And then I also remembered he was also on the Concert for Bangladesh box set, which I really loved. And, he was playing with George and Ringo. So that was cool to me because, George and Ringo, and Leon Russell, too, who's a pretty cool cat. And so, it was like I knew who he was. And then probably when I was getting pretty heavily into the Beatles, around, maybe 8 or 9 years old, a neighbor had a bootleg called The Great White Wonder, which it was just it was a bootleg. So back in those days, it had just had a plain white cover. And I thought it was the Beatles' White Album. So I was very excited to get a copy of the Beatles' White Album. And it was not that. It was a hodgepodge of things, but it was mostly demos he'd done with the band, which turned out to be the Basement Tapes.
Yeah.
I remember thinking this was like really spooky music, that it was a little scary at 8 or 9 years old. But there was something about it that, it sounded like guys in a room playing music. It was it reminded me of like sort of the Let It Be album, a kind of a loose, funky feel to it. And then I realized that was the band and Bob. So I tried to figure out who the band were. And there was the movie theater in the town I lived in used to have Friday night showings of rock and roll movies, like midnight showings. And we went to see The Last Waltz. And so I fell in love with the band, and Dylan did a couple of songs with them as well, which were just, totally blew me away. So it was this sort of slow burn. And then in the mid 80s, I had, obviously he was sort of a big deal. He was making videos, he was on MTV, and it wasn't, certainly considered his best music. But I had by that time inherited a bunch of records from people in my family. And so he came on tour with Tom Petty and the Heartbreakers to New York City. And so I scalped tickets because I couldn't get tickets. I was too slow, and it was harder, you had to line up and the whole thing back then. And I scalped 2 tickets, and I couldn't get anybody to go with me. None of my friends had any interest in seeing either one of these guys. So I had lousy friends. No, it was weird. It was weird. Petty, at that point, it was 1986, people felt like maybe he'd already peaked.
Right.
Which was obviously not the case. And then Dylan was, not really a hot commodity to 19, 20-year-olds. So, so I ended up re-scalping the ticket out in front of the Garden that night. I ended up sitting with a guy who was, I remember really vividly, he was a Vietnam vet. He bought the ticket from me. He was a Vietnam vet, and he hadn't seen Dylan since around 78 or 9 during the gospel tour. Right. So he was just telling me story. He'd seen him with the band. He'd seen him back in the 60s. He was like a real Dylan fan. So it was sort of infectious. And then, Dylan with the Heartbreakers was amazing. Dylan played some songs by himself.
Right.
It was riveting to see a guy that was the first time I'd ever seen somebody with just an acoustic guitar play to 20,000 people and have everybody paying attention, you know?
Yeah.
And then Petty came out and did some of his own stuff and with the Heartbreakers, and that was amazing. So it was just a really, really memorable night. And so then I went back and I sort of got all the CDs and, you know, whatever vinyl I could get and started collecting and got into bootlegs and the whole thing. And then, you know, I write about this many years later. I started to do work for Bob Dylan's office, and I wrote liner notes for the Blood on the Tracks box set, More Blood, More Tracks. And I write about this in there that in the early 90s, when I got to be friends with Pete Townsend, we were in a bar one afternoon because we talked about Bob Dylan kind of a lot, just as like this pinnacle of songwriting, this, you know, great. We would talk about Hendrix as sort of the pinnacle of guitar and Dylan as the pinnacle of songwriting. And I remember he came into this bar one afternoon and threw on the counter Blood on the Tracks and Freewheelin' Bob Dylan. And he said, you know, have you ever listened to these? And of course, I was kind of offended. Like, of course I've listened to these. And he said, but have you ever listened to them? Like really listened to them? And not just, you know, not just for the songs, but as a performer, you know, as a songwriter, like listen to them, try, you know, pick a couple you really love, try to learn them and perform them, because I think you will learn something from the process of doing that. And I write about this in the box set where, you know, I had to, one night I played, I think Idiot Wind at a bar here in New York City on Bleecker Street. And, you know, part of it was everybody was on the edge of their seats to see if I could even remember, because it's like 7 minutes long. And part of it too was, you know, could I do it any justice? And I remember walking home, you know, when I finished, everybody clapped and hooted. And I felt like it was really just because I got through it. And on the way home, I really started to understand what Pete had meant, that, you know, there's more to these songs than just the words and the music, that there's something about them that is monumental in the sort of category of songwriting and performing too.
Yeah. And you know what, Jeff, I think that's a really interesting point with Dylan as an artist, because for what you say of listening, you can put it on and just be carrying on with your daily day life sort of thing. But when you actually listen, and knowing that we were going to choose this subject, I think that's a point that I've learned with Bob Dylan and with him, and how you listen to his music. You actually have to listen to get what the product is. You have to genuinely listen, you know. And with what he's saying in a lot of his songs, to me, is just everything within life to be happy, from, you know, falling in love with someone, you know, doing this, doing that, you know, how your mind works, everything. It really is truly incredible, you know.
Yeah, I think for me, you know, you can find happy, sad, love, loss, you know, life and death and everything in between in his songs. There's really a roadmap for living your life. I think what's also amazing to me is that over the course of 50 years, he's done so many different things. He's played, you know, he's done folk, he's done country, he's done blues, he's done gospel, he's done rockabilly and swing, you know, sort of everything, you know, every musical category he's touched on, and really in remarkable ways. You know, he's not just dabbling in them, he's sort of owning them in his own unique way. And I think that's, you know, people don't give him enough credit for that. And I've always defended him as a singer. People have taken issue with that. I did an article about 5 years ago about how I think he's the greatest American singer, and certainly no disrespect to Aretha Franklin or Otis Redding. But, you know, when Bob Dylan steps up to the microphone, I think John Doe from X said this to me, when he steps up to the microphone, it's like it's the first time he sung the song, and it's also like it's the most important thing in the world he has to say. Yeah. And I think, you know, it's obviously true with any performer who's performed as long as him that, you know, not every performance is the greatest performance, but I think you will, there's a real, we throw this word around nowadays too much, but there's a real authenticity to what Bob Dylan does that's special and unique, and that, you know, when that is gone from the earth, we're really going to miss it. You know, we will have the records, but, you know, this is a guy he's going out on tour this fall, and I think it's going to be, you know, it'll be yet another chapter in an amazing career.
You know, when you say that about seeing him live and with his voice being the greatest American voice, well, do you know what? I generally, when I say this, I really love his voice. And not only do I really love his voice, when you say about seeing him live, when me and Susanna had tickets to go down to Hyde Park in London to see him and Neil Young play Hyde Park, we were so happy about going. It was such a buzz to be going. We were going down to London for a couple of days, and we you know, you've seen two super mega stars, right, playing on the same day. You know, that is just literally jackpot sort of thing. But me and Susanna both walked away that day, Jeff, saying we preferred Dylan to Neil, because when we saw Bob on that stage playing his piano and doing that set list of them songs, you know, he had that little smile on his face. And he had like, what would the capacity be? Let's say something like 75,000 people there,
Sure.
You know, seeing this guy, this old guy now playing his piano, but knowing that them tunes mean so much to so many people in the world. And, you know, it's one of them things you'll never forget. But it's having these conversations with someone like yourself now about his voice and what it means to have his voice as one of the greatest voices ever. Yeah, it's going to, I tell you what, I can't even comprehend, Jeff, the thinking of when that day comes when somebody's gone, because it's going to be very sad. But he's just so special.
Well, I did see, look, I think it's worth noting, because we'll get negative comments, you know, or people who disagree. Yeah. I know that Bob Dylan doesn't speak to everybody. And I know that especially his voice, especially now that it's kind of this growly, raggedy thing, a lot of times live, not always, but doesn't speak to everybody. And I know people who went to that show and preferred Neil. And I get that. I totally understand that. But I think also that, you know, that it just isn't the kind of music that everybody loves. However, I think it's in any lifetime, there's a moment for Bob Dylan. In other words, that whether you like him or not, you will reach a point in your life where if you allow him in, there's something in his catalog that will touch you in a really deep and meaningful way. And not just songs, not just the performances, but that voice. And I think, you know, a lot of people just write it off because it's, you know, it's hard, or it's too heavy, or the words are too difficult, you know, whatever. I get it. I totally understand that. And that's totally fine. You know, there's a place for, I don't know, the Eagles or Billy Joel in everybody's lives. However, or Bon Jovi, I don't know, whatever. My latest whipping boys are, but you know, and I understand why people like that music. That's not for me, but I also think, you know, for somebody like me, I will never choose to listen to those bands, but the people who choose to listen to those bands will also find Bob Dylan at some point, because there's something for everybody in his catalog. That there's something really deep and meaningful in the songs he's written over the last 50 or 60 years. And so if you just give it a chance, there will be a day where you'll go, I think I'm going to put on some Bob Dylan, and it will really change your day. So I think that's the difference. But I know there's naysayers out there, and we'll get negative comments. So I want to address that.
Well, but you know, the thing is, when I've been listening, I mean, I put with what I've got. I mean, I've got things like obviously that album. There's obviously, you know, that.
Sire, Blonde on Blonde, yeah.
There's that one.
Bringing It All Back Home. Amazing record.
And then what else have I got? That I really like.
Highway 61 Revisits. It's considered probably his greatest achievement. You know,
Yeah.
for Dylan fans, there's maybe a few others, Blood on the Tracks and Love and Theft and a few others, but that one, for the casual listener, pick that up. It's got Like a Rolling Stone and everything else. It's his peak moment in the 1960s.
Yeah, and you know, I think that is a great album. If anybody was to start listening to obviously Bob, I'd obviously say
that's where you start.
That's where you start. I mean, there's obviously things like that.
Freewheeling. Yep. That's what turned the Beatles on. So there you go. And Blood on the Track.
Hey, I mean, do you know what? That's another thing that I was going to mention. So we always, you know, everyone, how do you say this, right? Everyone's going on about like, oh yeah, Bob Dylan's like amazing. He, you know, so many people like Lennon, McCartney, Hendrix, the list, you know, the Stones, all individuals think that Dylan is obviously mega, right? But what I listened to something a while back was what Dylan actually thought about them. Yeah. You know, and that's the thing that I think is pretty good. You know, everyone thinks, oh yeah, they all love Dylan, but what did Dylan think about them? And Dylan was saying like, oh, Paul McCartney is an amazing songwriter, and you know, he's good and he's got this, and like, I really like that. It just made you think, it's, you know, of what Dylan thinks about other people. And yeah, I find that really interesting.
Well, I don't think you can be as committed to songwriting and performing as he's been over the course of his life without being a music fan. I mean, you know, I think his taste is really wide. That, you know, he loves early American music, Civil War era music. He loves Charlie Patton. He loves Hank Williams, Patsy Cline, all the way through Mavis Staples, and you know, Alicia Keys. You know, he just likes. He has a really broad palette.
Yeah.
So, but the people, you know, the people he gets asked about, obviously, are his peers he came up with in the 60s. So obviously they want to know, because he knew the Beatles, what did he think of the Beatles? Or he crossed paths with the Stones, so what did he think of the Stones? And I think he's always generous, especially with the artists who have made their own mark, you know. And I think, you know, probably, look, you know, I don't know what Bob Dylan thinks, but he seems to be very generous also, because he knows how hard the job is, you know. So if you've made your mark the way Paul McCartney is, I think he's genuinely, and I know the interview you're talking about, I think he's genuinely jealous of McCartney's gift for a melody, you know, that he's been able to write these finely crafted pop songs for, you know, 60 years and still have people love him and love them. And some of those songs will they'll certainly outlast Paul McCartney and Bob Dylan, you know. So it's interesting to think, you know, what his opinion is of these people. But I think, you know, ultimately, like us, he's just a music fan. I mean, he listens to the same stuff we do, which is kind of crazy.
Yeah, absolutely. Which is, it's going to bring me on to something where I think, you know, Dylan must have had a huge impact, right? And that's with, now this, if I can get the bloody thing open, right, is, I got that off Susanna's cousin, right, when we went to see her family in Czech Republic. And I've never really played it. We've just had it and it's been sitting around, right? But next year, I think I'm going to make a pack where it gets to January the 1st, right? I might start learning how to play it. So
there you go.
Because that is a great musical instrument.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I love so many songs that has that sound. and with him, you know, having a harmonica with his early 60s sound was pretty amazing.
Yeah. Well, and it's interesting too, because it really brought a sort of bluesy influence into his folk music, and a bluesy influence into his rock and roll, which, other than, I mean, there were bands who were doing it, but at the top tier, other than the Stones, I mean, the Beatles had a couple of songs early on, but they were always quick to abandon any style they did, where, you know, Mick Jagger is one of the great blues harp players. I mean, he's just an amazing harmonica player. So, you know, so I think it's cool what he, you know, people take that for granted. Like you were saying, it's just part of his 60s sound. But I think it was introducing a blues element to that folk country sound that was really kind of cool and unique. So, you know, it's like, if you look hard enough at Dylan, there's a uniqueness and a methodology, I think, going on that you might not realize right away. So there's plenty there to look for. Yeah.
Oh, there really is. And, you know, for all the awards and the Grammys and everything that Dylan has picked up, it's pretty amazing. Do you think there will ever be someone in the same league as him ever again?
You know, I mean, time marches on. There's always new creative people. I think the difference is, you know, music doesn't drive the culture the way it did, especially in the 60s and 70s when he was making his mark.
Yeah.
So it is really hard to imagine that an artist will have the chance for not just the longevity, but the ability to be recognized for, you know, I mean, he's written everything from protest songs to honky tonks. So I think, you know, it's hard to imagine somebody else will come along that will be able to do so many things. But, you know, I think if you're Bob Dylan or Mick Jagger or Keith Richards or Paul McCartney, you want people to come along. You want the tradition to be carried on. And I think what's most concerning right now is, you know, there's less bands, there's less rock and roll, there's, you know, even in the singer-songwriter genre or the hip hop genre, there's less, you know, the goal seems to be attaining stardom more than it does to be expanding your artistic horizons. And that's painting with broad strokes. There's obviously great artists out there.
Yeah.
But I think it will be interesting to see as, you know, because everybody can make a record in their bedroom now. It will be interesting to see if the next wave of hip hop artists or singer-songwriters, especially the female singer-songwriters, will sort of explode their tradition and make it something new and exciting the way that Bob Dylan and the Beatles and the Stones did in the 60s.
Yeah. And even with Dylan and Tom Petty and Jeff Lynne and Harrison with the Traveling Wilburys, I mean, you know, I can remember my old man talking to me about the Traveling Wilburys and discovering the Traveling Wilburys for the first time. You know, and when you look at them individuals and the tunes they made, and I don't think they took it seriously, but it was really good. But that's another thing that I don't think there'll ever be anything like that ever again. That could, but
yeah, they're unique because they were five friends that, I mean, I think the legend is a little bit far from the truth. I think George Harrison really wanted to do this.
Yeah.
But it came together in such a magical way that they were just five friends who liked hanging out together. And because they all played guitar, played music, were songwriters, that's what they ended up doing.
Yeah.
And I think, and you didn't mention Roy Orbison, and he was sort of he was absolutely a key ingredient to them. But I think it would be hard for that to happen in that kind of, serendipitous. And I think one of the things that's worth saying is, when Roy died and they made a second record, there was a little bit less. I actually love the second record, but there was a little bit less joy in it because the first one just sort of happened so magically. But look, it's to have that group of people together on one record. I think, the songs are the songs, but I think what's so infectious about it is the joy. You can hear that those guys were having fun making it.
Absolutely. I mean, it just must have been incredible, and all of them in their own right have got real stardom, real talent, really just something like magical, which is the best, perfect.
Yeah.
So what have you been up to recently with yourself?
Well, I've the big project I did this year, two big projects. I'm making a new record which should come out next spring, and we're talking about doing a UK tour in March.
Right.
So we may get to see you guys in March out there in the clubs.
Yeah.
It would be fantastic. And I mean, it's hard to imagine in the world we live in today, going out on the road in a foreign country for me. But there's that. And we're just starting. We've been doing outdoor shows, but this weekend we're doing a Tom Petty birthday show. That'll be only our second indoor show since, early 2020. So, we're just dipping a toe back into doing that. But the two big projects were I've been making a new record with a lot of people. All we've talked about this before. Earl Slick's on it, Duff McKagan's on it, Ben Gordelier and Steve Craddock from Paul Weller's band, Lee Harris from Nick Mason's band is on it. I know I'm leaving people out. Jess Greenfield and Jeremy Stacey from Noel Gallagher's records are on it. I'm trying to think. Jordan Summers from the Wallflowers, and just like everybody and anybody I could sort of corral into doing this. And then the other thing was I've done liner notes for some bands, but the biggest one is the Tattoo You 40th anniversary box set. If you buy the 2 CD version, there's about a 2,000 or 3,000 word essay that I wrote about the making of Tattoo You and all the bonus tracks. But if you buy the box set, which is I think 4 CDs or 7 vinyl records, there's like an 11,000 word book that comes with it.
Right.
And it's all about the making of the record, the tour they did, the world tour they did for 2 years after that. There's an interview with the associate producer of the record, Chris Kimsey, as well as the guy who designed the record and did the photos of Keith and Mick for it. So it's like a big deep dive into the world of the Rolling Stones in the early 80s. And it's one of those records that, I mean, people say to me all the time it's their last great record, and I don't necessarily believe that, but it was the last record where they were it topped the charts. It had a big hit. Start Me Up and Hang Fire and Waiting on a Friend were all over MTV back in the 80s. Great, and they're great songs. They play them to this day. And so it was a really special time in the Rolling Stones career. And so it was, it was pretty exciting to do. There's quotes from all the band members, including Charlie Watts, late great Charlie Watts, in the book. So that was pretty cool. And I've done, I worked on the Sgt. Pepper box for the Beatles, and I worked on the Blood on the Tracks box for Bob Dylan. But the Stones are, they're a living, breathing rock and roll band, the greatest rock and roll band, and they're still out there. They're touring right now.
Are you going to see him? Are you going to see him?
No, they didn't come anywhere near to New York City. I was hoping to obviously I, like anybody else, I want to get my box set signed. So, I hope look, next year is the 60th anniversary of the Rolling Stones.
Right.
I have no doubt they'll be marking that in grand style. So I'm sure they'll come to my town and yours in the course of, but this was, I think this was more to just get out there and limber up a little bit, because they hadn't played like anybody else. They hadn't played in a couple of years.
Well, I can honestly assure you on this, Jeff. When me and Susanna went to see that band in Edinburgh when they done 2018, after the pandemic, you lose track of time of when was when and when was what. But
yeah, sure.
When we went to see that band up in Scotland, I'm not kidding you, Jeff. Out of all the bands I've seen and all the people I've seen, that was the best gig I've ever been to. And
it's the Stones. There's no doubt about it. Where did they play in Scotland?
They played at Murrayfields, right?
Yeah.
Which is big venue. It was packed. It was before I'd moved up to live with Susanna, right? So I was still living down in Bromsgrave at the time. So I got the train. The gig was on, I think it was on the Saturday, right? So obviously I got the train up on Friday to here, and then Susanna drove up to Edinburgh. We stayed in like Airbnb for the night, which I think was probably about 60 quid or whatever. Got there, went to the gig, had a few drinkies, but not too much. And literally, we got to the point of not in like down the front, but to the barrier of like where the barrier is. So we had a proper good view. Yeah. And Ashcroft supported Stones that day, which was fantastic.
Yeah.
I love Richard Ashcroft. Yeah. Oh. You know what? I know Ashcroft's got a new acoustic album coming out, soon. But you know what? And I know he played the Palladium the other day, right? But you know what, Jeff? I really, really love Richard Ashcroft's voice.
Yeah, he's got a great voice.
He's got a great voice. And he's a great songwriter.
Great frontman, really
great
frontman.
Yeah, he's really brilliant. And I'm glad that he's working and he's back, and I'm sure there's still good things to come from him. He ain't finished. He ain't finished yet by a long shot. So, but when we saw Jagger, Jeff, for the hour and a half that we saw him, and that band playing them tunes, the 22 tunes or whatever it was, every single song, amazing. And Jagger, I thought I was going to be more impressing Keith, right? But Jagger for us was just the best.
He's Mick Jagger.
He's Mick Jagger. The best frontman of all time, I think.
He absolutely is. Every time I see him, it blows me away. And I'll tell you just, there were specific dealings with the Stones and their management and little things that were important to me, that you would think that, a guy like Mick Jagger or, their managers and whatever, they wouldn't care about how I felt about little corrections or little things here and there with regard to the box set. And I have to say, they were a class act. They really cared about this project being as good as it could possibly be.
Yeah.
And because originally when they hired me, they just wanted me to do a little bit, like a little short essay about the making of Tattoo You. But they asked me, their manager asked me, what are your ideas?
Yeah.
And so I wrote up a proposal the way I thought it should be laid out. And they said yes right away. It was going to be, it was going to be more money for them, but it was also, I thought, I've loved their box sets that they've done for Exile and Goat's Head Soup and Sticky Fingers and, all the albums up to now.
Yeah.
But I did think that, they could tell the story better, that they could tell the era of the band better. And so I really wanted to do that. And that tour was the first time I had seen the Stones. So I had a personal story to tell about them. And, you know, I remember when I first wrote it and turned it in, one of the guys who works with them said, "Oh, I think they're going to probably take that bit out about you going to see the Stones." Because I was a real Faces fan. And so when I went, I really was there to see Ronnie Wood and Ian McLagan, who was on keyboards at the time.
Yeah.
But when I got there, I was like you know, Mick Jagger and Keith Richards are right there in front of you. You're like, you know, forget Ronnie and Mac.
Yeah.
This is Stones. I mean, they were so electrifying to watch.
Absolutely.
And I was pretty young. You know, I was a very young guy at the time. I was only like 13 or 14. But man, it totally blew me away. So
absolutely.
So anyway, they were very generous and really just like first class to deal with. So it was really a pleasure to be involved and an honor. I mean, you know, how can it not be an honor to do anything for the Rolling Stones?
Absolutely, absolutely. And you know what? I have to tell you this as well, because this will stick with me forever, right?
Sure.
When we saw the Rolling Stones, Keith Richards played Happy, right?
Oh, fantastic, yeah.
And you know what? From everyone that you see play guitar to him playing that tune and singing and playing that song has become one of my favorite songs of all time now, because he did it. But it was the sound of it, Jeff, the sound of that band playing that specific song, the speed of how he played the song, everything about it.
It's remarkable.
Not like Don't Look Back in Anger out the water, right? You know.
Yeah. It's special.
Yeah, it's special.
It's the Rolling Stones. It's okay.
Yeah, it was just literally unbelievable. And for the legends that I've seen, which I love talking about, and I don't do it very often with people because you can talk about different names, and when you're at work and obviously living here now, and you know, my friends are down south and there's me and Susanna here, but when I can talk to you about obviously people I've seen, like The Who, Ray Davies, when I saw Black Sabbath, and obviously seen Weller, and, you know, seeing Brian May and different people like that, all in this category, and Dylan and Neil Young, and the list goes on. But I love seeing the legends. And, you know, hopefully you get to see more. And you just know it's so important in any of them people in that category of 60s through to even 70s.
I say it all the time, but that really is the golden age of rock and roll. I mean, you know, that was a remarkable, remarkable time. Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, for a guy that was a teenager in the 90s, I think who was influencing us at that time through our record collection, we certainly knew about the 1960s. And I wanted to listen to everything in the 90s. Even now, you still want to find them hidden gems that were happening in the 1960s. And what a period. What an absolute incredible time period.
It's crazy to think what the radio was like. That there would be like a new Beatles song and it would be Penny Lane on the radio. What would you think of that? It's hard to imagine what hearing Penny Lane on the radio would be like the first time, or any of them, really.
Yeah. I went to see Andrew Cushin in Newcastle a few weeks ago. It was a few weeks back. It was on a Friday night or something like that. And obviously I was curious about him because literally Noel's obviously been involved with him and producing his records, and with him being a local lad, I think it's only fair for the fan that I am, and with what we're doing, you've got to go and see him and you've got to go and suss him out. His gig was okay, right? His gig was okay, Jeff. I think he's still got a hell of a long way to go. He's got to keep writing. He's got to seriously this is just my opinion, he's got to keep writing, right? And not just try and be somebody. He's got to try and be his own individual.
Make his own mark, yeah.
Make his own mark, yeah. And no, it's too in the line of wanting to be someone else. It's the same kind of sound, you know.
He's young though. I mean,
he's young.
You know,
he's young.
He's a young guy, so he'll find his way. I have no doubt about it.
Yeah, and his band was all right. Okay, his band was okay, but I think hopefully along the way he will meet new musicians and work with better people. Sure. That's how I felt coming away from it.
I get it.
Yeah. So we went to see Andrew Cushin. We went to see Inhaler, right?
And cool.
Yes. We went to see Inhaler in Newcastle, right? Which I was really excited about. So believe me, Jeff, they are going all the way to the top. And I mean, even now,
I have no doubt about it.
Yeah. I mean, even now, we saw them in a small little venue in Newcastle at the university, right? So we seen them in the university, which is a small venue. It was packed, absolutely packed. Sure. I mean, you were like literally like this. The sound, them, and the four of them have got to stick together through it, thick and thin, through everything. That second album needs to come out and absolutely be massive. If that second album comes out and becomes number one again, then like literally they've really got to go full on and just go for it.
Yeah.
You know what? Because they could sell out the big venues now, or you know, they need to do a support for someone that's big. That's pretty much what they have got to do. If some big bands going on the road and playing big venues, then you know they need to get involved in that. So, but they are, you know, they're a really good band. I like them.
Cool, that's good to hear.
Yeah,
I've unfortunately not gotten to see them live. They were here pretty recently, but I don't. You know, anyway, I'm looking forward to seeing them.
Yeah, they're definitely worth seeing. But they had this little indie band called Wet Leg support them, right? And they were a bit. Can you remember the band like Moldy Peaches?
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, they were a bit like them, like proper.
Interesting.
Proper little indie band, right? But just had this really good tunes. And I met the singer and I met the drummer and I was talking to them about how good their band is. And there was people stood behind me saying like, these are all right, these are. And I said it to them. The weekend just gone, me and Susanna, we went to see the Magic Numbers. Okay.
Oh, interesting. Yeah.
Yeah. So they were doing the anniversary to their first album.
Oh, right? Wow.
Which apparently went double platinum. So I don't know how.
Back in the day when things went double platinum.
Double platinum, yeah. But we were trying to find out how many that would be. I don't know. Would you know how it was double platinum?
What? Yeah, it's different in the UK than in the States. I don't know the number for double platinum. A million. I don't know. I thought 250,000 was platinum, but I don't know.
Yeah. Anyway,
Wikipedia will tell you.
Sure. So we got tickets. They were doing the first album to that, and I was messaging Romeo in the day to say, we're going to the gig. It's Susanna's first time seeing him, but I've seen you before. It'd be great to see you. And they're like, we'll give you a shout out. And it's like, okay. So during the gig, I mean, I said to Susanna, I was like, right, I've been talking to the band and they said they're going to shout us out. So when they do, we'll make sure, obviously, we'll get it on our phone sort of thing. We had,
yeah.
The thing is, when you're doing these sort of things, you're obviously having to delete stuff off your phone because your memory's all full, right?
Of course.
So, exactly. So we were like, during the gig, Romeo was just like, so I was talking to someone today, and I must admit my phone went dead, but I can just remember the name, Susanna. And we were pretty much down the front. So Susanna's like, yeah, that's us, that's us. And who's the other guy? Who's the other one? Simon. Oh, yeah. And they dedicated a song to us, man.
Oh, that's so cool.
And you know what? It was absolutely beautiful. It was just the tune that they did, right? It was the 7th track of the album. So they did it, and it was beautiful. And I met Sean, the drummer, and Michelle, the bass player, after the gig. I didn't get to see Romeo. We waited around quite a bit, and we were freezing, so we just went. But
yeah, sure.
It was really good. It was really good to see them.
That's really cool.
Yeah, it was a great night. And it's nights like that where you just think, for what I'm doing, to have nights like that, and then obviously, to, talk about the channel and stuff. It was really great. So
excellent. Cool.
We've got tickets to see El Slick in Newcastle.
Oh my God. You'll have to remind me a couple of days beforehand. And
I will.
Yeah. Right on. Oh my God, that's amazing.
Yeah.
There's my, can we see you cannot really see.
Oh yeah, there you go.
It was in my pocket, just by coincidence. My Earl Slick guitar pick. Everybody should go see Slicky on tour. He's got like a dozen or so dates over there.
Yeah.
And I think most of them are sold out, but
Newcastle.
Maybe they'll add some more, or you can get some tickets on the day. They usually open up some tickets on the day. So I encourage everybody to go. He's got a great band for the tour. A couple of guys from Iggy Pop's band and his son Lee on drums. It's a really good band. So
Excellent. What did you think of the Oasis movie?
I fucking loved it.
It was amazing.
Mate, they were absolutely at their peak, and I'll tell you what I can't wait for is the home release, because it's going to have both concerts complete.
Yeah.
So it's like the movie is cool because it's a moment in time, and it talks to all the people who were there as well.
Yeah.
Like now, and that's really neat. But to watch it over and over, I want to see the concerts. I want to be able to watch the concerts in full.
Yeah. Me and Susanna went to see it at the cinema, right?
Oh, that must have been amazing. Yeah.
It was amazing. And get a load of this. They were talking to people that went to the gig, right? And there was a girl called Jo from Birmingham, right?
Sure.
That's my best mate, Mark. That's his sister. And I was just,
oh my gosh.
I was just like, I messaged her after, like, when we came out the cinema, and I was like, "Was that you?" And then she's like, "Yeah, it was me." I'm like, "No way."
It's pretty amazing. I do know a couple of people who were in it, but it was funny because the amount of people that I know who were there is kind of amazing. I had considered going, but I just thought it was going to be too difficult. I think I was going to be scalping a ticket. It was a hot ticket in sort of early July or July before the gig. So it was just too expensive to be able to fly over, to be able to get to the gigs, because it's not anywhere close to anything. And also buy the ticket, it was just at the time way too expensive. So,
and obviously Liam's just sold out two nights, obviously doing that work.
Amazing. And I'm really glad for him. I've been watching, he did a few gigs this summer, a few festivals, and he's really killing it. I wasn't crazy about his band. His band has really gotten better. He got a new drummer, which was a huge improvement. Yeah. Bonehead's obviously in the band, playing great. I think I'm eager to see what his new record is like, because the problem for me is always, he plays all these Oasis tunes and they're amazing, and then he'll play some of his solo songs and they're, for me, they're not so great. And I know I'll get hate mail for that, but so I really wish him the best. I really hope that his new record has great songs on it.
Well, I can imagine
he deserves it. He's Liam Gallagher.
Cool.
Well, Simon, it's always a pleasure to talk to you. I wish you the best with the channel.
Yeah.
Say hi to Suzanne and all your peeps there.
Yeah.
But I hope more people not just subscribe, but I hope more people join the Patreon. I think that's a really important thing to support the people that we watch and that we wish well. And because we want you to do more of these, and we want you to be able to have the time and money, because it really supports the channel and supports you.
Having your support means the absolute world to me, you know.
You have a great weekend. It was great
Yeah.
to talk to you. Say hi to Suzanne.
See you later.
Wishing you the best.
Yeah, see you soon. See you now.
Thanks everybody out there for watching. Have a great
Will
weekend.
do. Bye now, Jeff. Bye.